For millions of moviegoers, Ali MacGraw was the face of heartbreaking romance after her unforgettable role in Love Story. Audiences believed they understood the woman behind that gentle, tragic character, but off-screen, her own love life was far more complicated than any script. At the height of her fame, MacGraw made a decision that shocked Hollywood, walking away from a powerful marriage after falling for one of the most dangerous stars in the industry. Decades later, when she finally spoke honestly about that relationship, fans realized the story behind it was far more intense than the rumors ever suggested. The rise of Hollywood's new romantic icon. Long before scandals surrounded her personal life, Ali MacGraw appeared to embody a rare kind of Hollywood innocence. She did not arrive in the film industry as a typical aspiring actress chasing fame. Instead, her early career began in a completely different world, fashion. In New York, MacGraw worked behind the scenes, assisting legendary fashion editor Diana Vreeland, absorbing the aesthetics and discipline of the fashion industry while quietly building connections that would later change her life. At the time, she had already experienced the first chapter of her romantic life. While studying at Wellesley College, she met a Harvard student named Robin Hohen. Their relationship moved quickly, and within months, she married him. Hohen came from a well-connected family that expected her to enter high society circles, even hoping she might appear in the prestigious social register. Yet the marriage never truly matched MacGraw's restless personality. She was still trying to discover who she was and what direction her life might take. Within a short period, the marriage ended in divorce. That early experience would later shape how she approached relationships. MacGraw admitted years later that she had not fully understood herself at the time. She had entered adulthood quickly, stepping into roles, wife, professional, public figure, before learning how to communicate her own needs. Meanwhile, her career was quietly shifting. What began as a fashion job gradually opened doors into modeling and styling work. Photographers noticed her striking features and natural presence in front of the camera. Eventually, she began appearing in small acting projects, which led to a role in the film Goodbye, Columbus. That performance introduced her to Hollywood audiences and revealed something unique about her screen presence. She did not perform with theatrical intensity or dramatic gestures. Instead, she projected a quiet, emotional authenticity that felt natural and intimate. The real transformation came when she was cast opposite Ryan O'Neal in the romantic drama Love Story. The film became an enormous cultural phenomenon. Its simple but devastating narrative of two young lovers facing tragedy resonated deeply with audiences. MacGraw's portrayal of Jenny made her an instant star. Suddenly, she was no longer a newcomer experimenting with acting. She had become one of the most recognizable faces in Hollywood. Magazine covers, television appearances, and award ceremonies followed. Viewers associated her with sincerity and emotional vulnerability, believing the actress shared the same gentle spirit as the character she portrayed. But behind the scenes, her life had already taken another turn. During the success of Love Story, she had fallen in love with a powerful Hollywood producer, Robert Evans. Evans was a commanding figure in the film industry. As a leading executive at Paramount Pictures, he had overseen several ambitious projects and possessed the kind of authority few producers ever achieved. Their relationship quickly became one of the most talked-about partnerships in Hollywood. When they married, it seemed like a union of rising talent and established power. For a time, the marriage appeared stable. They welcomed a son together, and MacGraw's career continued to grow. Yet fame was already changing her world. She had become one of the most sought-after actresses in the industry, and new opportunities kept arriving. One of those opportunities would place her directly opposite a man whose reputation was unlike anyone else in Hollywood. His name was Steve McQueen, and the moment they met, MacGraw later admitted she sensed that her life was about to become far more complicated. The meeting that changed everything. By the time Ali MacGraw was offered a role opposite Steve McQueen, she was already living the kind of life many people imagined was perfect. She was married to powerful producer Robert Evans, raising their young son and enjoying the success that followed her breakthrough performance in Love Story. From the outside, her career and personal life seemed firmly in place. But when the script for The Getaway arrived, something about the project made her hesitate. The film paired her with Steve McQueen, a man whose reputation preceded him wherever he went. McQueen was not just another leading actor. He was considered the ultimate screen rebel, a star whose charisma came with a dangerous edge. Known for films like Bullitt and Le Mans, he had built his image around risk, intensity, and a fiercely independent personality. MacGraw later admitted that her hesitation had very little to do with the film itself. The truth was simpler and more personal. She had a feeling that if she spent time working with McQueen, things might become complicated. In her memoir, she would later write that she sensed she could get into serious trouble with him. At the time, she tried to rationalize the decision. She told herself she should remain close to home and focus on her young child. She was married to one of Hollywood's most influential producers, and accepting another major film project would require weeks away on location. But beneath those practical concerns was a quiet recognition that McQueen's presence might pull her into something she could not easily control. Despite those doubts, she eventually accepted the role. The production moved to Texas, where filming began under the direction of Sam Peckinpah. The atmosphere on set was intense. Peckinpah was known for demanding performances and pushing actors into emotionally charged situations. But the tension surrounding the film had another source as well. Both of its stars carried enormous public attention, and the combination of their personalities created an undeniable spark. MacGraw would later describe the moment McQueen entered her life in strikingly simple terms. She said that when he walked into a room, people reacted instantly. Men, women, even children seemed to stop what they were doing and look at him. There was something magnetic about his presence that was difficult to explain, and she admitted that she was no exception. What followed happened quickly. According to several accounts from the production, the relationship between the two actors began almost as soon as the cast arrived on location. The connection between them was not subtle. Crew members noticed the chemistry almost immediately. MacGraw later wrote that she became obsessed with McQueen from the moment he stepped into her world. The attraction was not something she believed she could easily ignore. It felt overwhelming and immediate, the kind of emotional pull that makes rational decisions suddenly seem irrelevant. At the same time, she understood the consequences. She was married. Her husband was deeply involved in the industry, and the project itself had been encouraged by him. Accepting the role had been part of her professional life, not a step toward ending her marriage. But the reality unfolding around her was different. Rumors began circulating within the industry. Hollywood had always thrived on gossip, and the idea that two of the biggest stars of the moment had started a secret relationship immediately captured attention. The press soon began reporting hints of a romance forming behind the scenes of the film. The public fascination only grew stronger when The Getaway reached theaters. The movie performed well at the box office, and audiences could see the chemistry between its two leads on screen. Many viewers suspected that the emotional intensity in their performances reflected something real. Behind the scenes, the situation had already changed MacGraw's life in ways she could not undo. The affair that shattered a Hollywood marriage. As filming continued on The Getaway, the connection between Ali MacGraw and Steve McQueen was no longer something that could be hidden. What had begun as a powerful attraction soon turned into a full relationship, and the consequences spread quickly beyond the film set. In Hollywood, news traveled fast, especially when two of the industry's biggest stars were involved. At the time, MacGraw was still married to Robert Evans, the influential executive behind major productions at Paramount Pictures. Evans had not only been her husband, but also one of the most important figures in her career. He had supported her casting in Love Story, the film that transformed her from a rising actress into one of the most recognizable faces in the industry. Their marriage had once seemed like a perfect Hollywood alliance. a powerful producer and a newly crowned star building a future together. They had welcomed their son, Josh, and for a time the relationship appeared stable. But the situation unfolding during the production of The Getaway began to erode that stability. Hollywood gossip columns started publishing whispers about MacGraw and McQueen. At first, the rumors were cautious, hinting at a growing closeness between the two actors. But as the weeks passed, the reports became more direct. Journalists began describing the relationship as inevitable, pointing to the undeniable chemistry between the pair both on and off the screen. For Evans, the situation was deeply personal and painfully public. Not only was his wife involved with another man, but that man was one of the most famous actors in the world. The scandal quickly became one of the most talked-about stories in the entertainment industry. MacGraw later admitted that she understood the damage her choices were causing. Yet she also described the relationship with McQueen as something she felt powerless to stop. She called it chemical, a force that seemed to draw them together regardless of the circumstances surrounding them. Friends and colleagues noticed how completely she had fallen under McQueen's influence. He carried an aura that many people found irresistible. His background, growing up in a troubled environment before becoming Hollywood's ultimate bad boy star, only intensified the fascination people felt toward him. On screen, he represented toughness and rebellion, and off-screen that image was not entirely an act. For MacGraw, the attraction was not only physical but emotional as well. She had built her career portraying sensitive characters. Yet McQueen represented the opposite energy: unpredictable, intense, and difficult to control. The contrast between their personalities seemed to fuel the connection. Eventually, the tension within her marriage could no longer be ignored. The rumors surrounding the affair had reached a point where silence was impossible. Conversations between MacGraw and Evans became increasingly strained, and the relationship began to unravel. By the end of that period, the outcome was clear. MacGraw and Evans separated, and their marriage moved toward divorce. For many observers, the breakup symbolized the dramatic collision between love, ambition, and fame that often defines Hollywood relationships. The scandal fascinated the public. Audiences who had recently embraced MacGraw as the tender heroine of love story suddenly found themselves watching a very different narrative unfold in real life. The actress once associated with innocence was now at the center of one of the industry's most sensational romantic controversies. But the story did not end with the collapse of her marriage. In fact, the most intense chapter of her relationship with Steve McQueen was only beginning. A movie star marriage built on passion. By the time the scandal surrounding Ally MacGraw and Steve McQueen reached its peak, there was little left to hide. Her marriage to Robert Evans had collapsed, and the relationship that began quietly during the filming of The Getaway was now fully public. In the world of Hollywood celebrity culture, the two had become one of the most talked-about couples of the era. Within a short time after MacGraw's divorce from Evans, she and McQueen married. The ceremony took place in Wyoming, away from the intense spotlight of Los Angeles. For many observers, the wedding felt like the natural conclusion to a love story that had already captured headlines across the entertainment industry. At first, the relationship seemed exactly as dramatic and exciting as people imagined. McQueen was widely considered the most charismatic male star in Hollywood. His reputation as the ultimate cool leading man had been built through films such as The Great Escape and The Sand Pebbles. Off-screen, he carried the same powerful presence. MacGraw once explained that when he walked into a room, everyone noticed immediately. There was an electricity around him that few people could ignore. For a while, their marriage reflected that intensity. The couple lived in Malibu, away from the busiest parts of Hollywood, spending much of their time in relative privacy. MacGraw later described those early days as carefree and even joyful. They hosted relaxed gatherings, spent long afternoons outdoors, and enjoyed a lifestyle that felt far removed from the formal world of movie premieres and studio meetings. But beneath that surface, the relationship carried tensions that slowly began to grow. One of the most significant issues involved MacGraw's career. At the time of their marriage, she was still one of the most sought-after actresses in the industry. Offers for new films continued to arrive, and her fame after Love Story meant studios were eager to cast her in major roles. McQueen, however, saw the situation differently. He believed that the balance of their marriage required a clear division between his career and her responsibilities at home. According to MacGraw, he did not want his wife continuing to work in Hollywood. In his view, the household needed stability rather than two competing film careers. The result was a decision that dramatically altered her professional life. At the height of her fame, MacGraw stepped away from acting. She later explained that she essentially stopped making films in order to focus on family life and raising her child. In interviews years later, she reflected on that period with a mixture of understanding and regret. Her memoir described the experience in even clearer terms. She wrote that she took on the role of homemaker completely, cooking, cleaning, and managing daily life, while McQueen continued to dominate the film industry. For a woman who had recently been celebrated as one of Hollywood's brightest stars, the adjustment was profound. At the same time, other difficulties were emerging. Both MacGraw and McQueen struggled with alcohol, and the pressure of fame often intensified their arguments. McQueen's reputation for intensity extended beyond the screen. He could be deeply charming one moment and distant the next, a pattern that made the relationship unpredictable. MacGraw later admitted that their connection was powerful but unstable. The same attraction that had brought them together so quickly also created emotional turbulence. They loved each other fiercely, yet their personalities often clashed in ways neither of them fully understood. For several years, the couple remained together despite those challenges. To the outside world, they still represented one of Hollywood's most glamorous unions. Yet, privately, the marriage was becoming increasingly fragile. The breaking point. For several years, the marriage between Ali MacGraw and Steve McQueen continued under the weight of intense emotions, conflicting expectations, and growing personal struggles. What had begun as a passionate relationship during the filming of The Getaway slowly transformed into something far more complicated. At the center of the tension was a question that neither of them could avoid forever: MacGraw's career. When she married McQueen, she had already become one of the most recognizable actresses in Hollywood thanks to Love Story. Studios still saw her as a bankable star, and scripts continued to arrive. Yet for years, she had stepped away from acting to maintain the life McQueen believed they should have. At first, she accepted the arrangement. She devoted herself to family life and tried to adjust to the new identity she had taken on. But gradually, the absence of her career began to affect her sense of self. Acting had not simply been a job, it was the path through which she had discovered her voice and independence. Eventually, the subject could no longer be avoided. MacGraw told McQueen that she wanted to return to work. His response was direct and uncompromising. According to later accounts, he made it clear that if she chose to resume acting, their marriage would not survive. The statement revealed the deep divide between them. McQueen believed the stability of their relationship depended on the life they had created together. MacGraw, however, felt increasingly confined by the role she had been playing for years. The decision she faced was not simply about another film project. It was about reclaiming a part of herself that had been set aside. Around this time, other problems were also eroding the relationship. Both of them struggled with alcohol, and the emotional intensity that once fueled their attraction now contributed to frequent conflicts. Rumors of McQueen's infidelity circulated within Hollywood circles, adding another layer of strain. MacGraw later acknowledged that she eventually responded with her own acts of betrayal, describing the situation as an attempt to escape the growing unhappiness within the marriage. Despite moments of reconciliation, the relationship had reached a point where neither of them felt secure. The life they had imagined together was no longer sustainable. The turning point arrived when MacGraw accepted a role in the film Convoy. Taking the part represented a clear decision. She would return to acting regardless of the consequences for her marriage. For McQueen, that choice confirmed what he had feared. Their relationship had reached its end. The couple separated and eventually filed for divorce. What had once been one of Hollywood's most intense and widely discussed romances concluded after several turbulent years. For many observers, the breakup felt inevitable in retrospect. The same passion that had drawn them together during the filming of The Getaway had always carried the potential for conflict. Two powerful personalities, each struggling with personal challenges, had attempted to build a life together under extraordinary public attention. Yet even after the marriage ended, MacGraw did not describe the relationship simply as a mistake. In later interviews, she reflected on the experience with a surprising mixture of honesty and gratitude. She acknowledged that their years together included both extraordinary happiness and painful turmoil. She also admitted that she wished things could have ended differently, because only a short time after their divorce, another tragedy would reshape how she remembered the man who had once changed her life so dramatically. Looking back at the love that changed her life. After the divorce between Ali MacGraw and Steve McQueen, the chapter that had once consumed Hollywood headlines quietly came to an end. The two had shared years filled with powerful attraction, deep conflict, and emotional intensity. But once the relationship ended, time moved quickly in a way neither of them could control. Not long after their separation, McQueen's life took another turn. He later married model Barbara Minty, attempting to build a new chapter away from the turbulence that had marked much of his earlier life. Yet his time was tragically short. He died at the age of 50 after complications related to cancer treatment. The news shocked the film industry and forced many people who had known him to reconsider the complicated legacy he left behind. For MacGraw, his death closed the possibility of something she had quietly hoped for: reconciliation. Years later, she admitted that she regretted never having the chance to sit down with him again once both of them had matured and become sober. Their relationship had been shaped by youth, fame, and addiction. She believed that if they had survived those years long enough to grow older and clearer in their thinking, they might have been able to understand each other in a way that had never been possible during their marriage. She once reflected that she wished they could have grown old together without the influence of alcohol or destructive habits. That simple statement revealed how much reflection she had done about those years. Despite the turmoil of the relationship, MacGraw never described herself as a victim. She repeatedly emphasized that their marriage contained moments of real happiness. There were days when the connection between them felt joyful and effortless, balanced by other days that were painful and chaotic. In her words, there were wonderful days and dreadful days. Over time, MacGraw's life gradually moved away from the Hollywood spotlight. She continued acting for a period, even appearing in television projects, but the intensity of the industry no longer held the same attraction it once had. Eventually, she made a decision that surprised many people who still associated her with the glamour of the film world. She left Hollywood behind. MacGraw relocated to Santa Fe, New Mexico, seeking a quieter environment far removed from the constant attention that had defined her earlier career. In that setting, she rebuilt her life with a different set of priorities. She became involved with nonprofit organizations, supported charitable work, and began collaborating with fashion brand Ibu on clothing designs. The work allowed her to reconnect with the creative world that had originally inspired her career before acting. Another significant change involved her personal health. After struggling with alcoholism during earlier periods of her life, MacGraw eventually became sober and remained committed to that decision for decades. Sobriety gave her a clearer perspective on many of the experiences that had once felt overwhelming. When she speaks about her past today, she does so with a calm honesty that surprises many people who remember the scandal surrounding her relationship with McQueen. She no longer frames those years as a dramatic tragedy or a romantic fantasy. Instead, she describes them as an important chapter that shaped the person she eventually became. Ali MacGraw's story reminds us that the most dramatic love stories don't always happen on screen. Sometimes the real-life choices behind the spotlight are even more complicated than the movies themselves. What do you think? Was Ali MacGraw right to follow her heart, even though it ended her marriage? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more Hollywood stories that changed history.